Hi, good morning, everyone. Apologies for being a little bit late. I was having difficulties logging in for some reason, the joys of technology. I do have Abdullah on the line from Patients Association as well. Morning, Abdullah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
That's great, perfect. Yeah, thank you. Apologies for the wait there. Let me just, and I see I've got 10 people on the line as well, which is great. So again, sorry everyone for the delay. Sorry Abdullah for keeping you waiting. I had the incorrect password, so I was logging in and it locked me out. I see we've got, maybe just give it another minute or so. So I guess just some housekeeping stuff to start. Again, thank you everyone for joining. There is a facility at the moment. All the attendees are on mute, just in listen only mode. But you are able to ask questions. So if, when you log onto the webinar on the panel, you'll see there's a question box. So we will make some time at the end of the webinar. I think we'll go for about 25 minutes, 30 minutes or so, and just talk through everything with Abdullah, and then we'll have some time at the end to answer questions. So during the webinar, if anything comes to mind, just put it inside the question box there, and then we'll do our best to answer at the end. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to share my screen quickly. And if you're ready, Abdullah, then we could just kick it off.
Sure. Yep.
Yeah, perfect. Can you see my screen there?
I can. Yep.
Perfect. That's great. So thanks again, Abdullah, for joining. I guess just to give a bit of background. So I'm Conor Buckle, head of business development at Economic Change. And I've got Abdullah from the program management team at the Patients Association. Maybe Abdullah, you can just do a bit more of a detailed intro to yourself as well.
Yeah, hi there. My name's Abdullah. I'm the Operations and Programs Coordinator at the Patients Association. We are a patient organisation charity with a focus on improving patient experience and patient safety. We provide a variety of services, such as a helpline, where we provide advice and support to patients and the public. We do project work with a number of NHS organisations and healthcare organisations, and we also do some media work. So you may have seen some of our comments on certain newspapers or on radios, giving our views from the patient's perspective. So we're a very patient-orientated charity.
That's great.
Yeah,
that's great. Thank you so much. Yeah, and we've worked closely with Abdullah, the rest of the team. I think we did a project with Patients Association. It's a little while back now, and it's been an interesting journey. I was having a chat with Abdullah yesterday just about the journey that the organisation has been on since the initial project, and then what developments have happened since then. I think we'll dive into that a bit later. I think just to frame the webinar a little bit, we're going to do a bit more background. Abdullah's given a little bit already, but just an overview to Patients Association, a bit more detail around the Salesforce project, some of the outcomes, and then some takeaways for yourselves who are on the webinar listening in. So you have given a bit of an overview already, Abdullah. Is there anything that you would add to what you had said already in terms of the vision and the mission and what's on this slide that you can see over here already?
Yeah, so as I mentioned previously, through our services, we try to implement our vision, which is that health and social care will be delivered to patients in the way that they deserve. And so we try to do that through change via project work with NHS organisations. We try to also empower patients as well by giving them advice and support and signposting them with the right information so that they're comfortable and confident in the decisions that they make when it comes to their own care. I think that's all I can think of off the top of my head, to be honest. The rest of it is on the screen, as you can see. Give effect to the patient voice, as I mentioned earlier. We try to do that through our media work, where we give patients a perspective on a variety of issues that tend to headline health news from time to time. So we try to sort of implement, so these aren't just platitudes. We try to actually do this actively through our work.
Yeah, definitely. I think from our perspective, with your organization and with all organizations we work with, we don't want to just come in and, economic change doesn't want to just come in and do the technology side of the project and that's the end of it. We really, we like to understand what the vision of the organization is, what the mission of the organization is. And I think one of the huge benefits, obviously, of working with a platform like Salesforce is that we can make sure that we tailor and configure that platform to help you achieve that. Obviously there's the operational side of things and the technology benefit that we're looking at for the organization from a user perspective and potentially from a internally and also from a service user perspective, depending on the requirement. But how do we help you achieve that longer term vision and mission? And we always try to take a much more sort of long-term view as to how we can use the technology to support you in that mission. Because at the end of the day, it's about reaching out and having an impact, and then we want to help organizations achieve that. So I guess looking at the Salesforce project that you went through, maybe you could talk us. I know there's been some changes within your organization, but maybe you could talk us through some of the reasons that you were looking at a new CRM data management solution in the first place, and some of the products that you were looking at as well.
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, we cover a broad range in terms of scope, but at the same time, we're a very small organization with around 11 employees. So you can imagine how daunting it can be to try and do so much with just a few members of staff. And so we needed to be a lot more productive. And the best way to be productive is to make use of technology. So before we implemented Salesforce efficiently through the project with economic change, where there was only one part of the organization that was using it, which was our helpline. No other area of the organization was making use of Salesforce at the time. We held tons of data on a variety of spreadsheets, and that was not ideal at the time. Reporting was often very difficult and time consuming on the already limited number of staff. So we didn't have a lot of time to sort of do what we needed to do. And so we needed to free up staff time. And the best way to do that was to try and implement a change in the way that we work internally. Yeah,
I think that's a very common scenario that we come across with a lot of organizations, limited, in terms of number of staff that you can have to, from an operational perspective and the admin side of the organization and making sure things run effectively, but trying to get more efficiencies in place. And, definitely, as you've said, one of the key ways of doing that is working with the right technology, building the process into that technology, looking at things like automation, just to help streamline all of the efforts internally. So you mentioned the helpline there was initially the only part of the organization using Salesforce as well, and then everyone had kind of separate spreadsheets and data all over the place. And how has that changed over the last year or two since that initial project?
Yeah, so at the conception of the product, what happened was a lot of the data that we were holding on spreadsheets was imported into Salesforce. So Salesforce has the capability to import data very easily from anything that's held in a spreadsheet format. And so that didn't take very long. It's just sort of getting staff on board, because some members of staff were apprehensive at first when it came to using a new system. It required training, and obviously a lot of their anxieties were taken away after a number of training sessions. So that's always alleviated with giving people inductions and training sessions. But now, 2 years down the road, we're all on Salesforce. All areas of the organizations are on Salesforce. We have that organizational intelligence, being able to access a history of relationships between our members, those who contact our helpline, and other organizations that we work with. We didn't have that we couldn't put that on a single page previously. That was held on multiple spreadsheets. But now we've got a timeline of information that we can access within the click of a button. And in addition to that, reporting is very easy now. It's almost, the more you use Salesforce, the more the reports give you. So it's a matter of just creating the reports once, and that's it. And then it's just as easy as selecting a range of dates to give you that data. And so everything's a lot easier, and staff time's freed up now to do the things that we really want to do. And all of the repetitive tasks are automated essentially.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's definitely some of the ROI that we see across all organizations of all types and all sizes. You know, just having a single system of record, having that 360-degree view across internal staff, across service users, members, any partners you might be working with. And I think key there is, as we've mentioned, having that relational understanding, and then being able to tie that all in with some really slick reporting, which kind of, in a way, comes out of the box with Salesforce. Obviously, you could further customize the figure and have individual dashboards. You know, so I think this is all really big value add stuff with Salesforce, and it's just everything in one place and understanding the data that you have. You know, you did mention the adoption side of things, and you know, we do a lot of work with organizations as part of any project that we do, as I'm sure you know, in terms of training and making sure that not only each team, but each individual, and even the senior management team in the organization, each has that opportunity to learn more and understand the value to them as a user, and you know, ultimately understand what the value is to the service users and to your members as well. And how was your experience working with us? I've just touched on it a little bit now, but working with economic change, you know, how was that experience for you and for the organization?
I found it to be extremely informative and comprehensive. There was a range of workshops that were held with various members of staff, depending on what area of the organization they worked in. So training sessions weren't a one-size-fits-all type. It was very tailored and individualistic. So I obviously, because I had an interest in all areas of the organization, I was fortunate enough to attend all of the training sessions, and I found them to be extremely tailored for each member of staff, and very supportive. And there were Q&A sessions, so it felt more like a workshop than a lecture. And so staff were very involved in the learning process as well. They asked a lot of questions. They were able to challenge as well some of the things that were being taught to them. And so it was a very friendly atmosphere, I found it to be.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, it's good to hear. I think the project took place before my time at Economic Change, so it's good for me to hear that as well. You know, and I think it's really important that we make those kind of sessions inclusive. So it includes the various teams, all the relevant stakeholders within your organization. You know, the way we see the work that we do is it's a joint effort, it's a joint project. Obviously, we are handling the Salesforce implementation and configuration side of it, but you know, the more that we can work together, the two organizations, you know, I think the better the results are going to be. It is, you know, it's not just us, as I said earlier in the course, not just, we don't ever want to be the organization that just comes in, does a project and walks away. We really want to work with you, understand each of your pains in terms of individual staff members, the teams, work with you on finding the right solutions, challenging ideas, and coming up with the best results. I think is the way that we like to do it. You spoke a little bit about, you know, obviously you said that the use of Salesforce has extended across the organization. Maybe you could tell us a little bit more about the products that you were using initially when it was just your helpline that was using Salesforce, and what you're using now, and what you think might be in scope at some future point to kind of extend functionality even further.
Yeah, just using, I can even use the helpline as an example, really, because even though they were using Salesforce, they weren't using it as efficiently and as effectively as they should have. We were only providing an email and a call service at the time, But since we've adopted Salesforce, we've added a live chat feature, and so it's a lot more integrated with Salesforce now, and our website as well. So there's a lot more capability in improving your services that you provide to your customers or to your clients if you make more use of Salesforce. And so at the time we thought, the helpline was good to go. We thought the other areas of the organizations were the ones that needed to get onto Salesforce. But actually what we discovered was the more we used it, the more we realized that we can actually improve the way we use it for existing areas of the organization. Projects, we had all of our project work on spreadsheets, and we had another spreadsheet in terms of the funding and the costing for projects, which was an absolute nightmare to try and logistically manage. But once all of that data was on Salesforce, it was very easy to manage each project, and also especially to create the reports and have that real-time data that if you're out and about, you can access the mobile app and it will give you that information if you're meeting, clients, or if you're meeting the same individuals that you're working with in a particular project, you'll be able to be up to date and sort of discuss the next steps and whatnot. So the possibilities are endless really with Salesforce in terms of the way it improves the way you work internally.
Yeah, definitely. All those areas that you mentioned, I think it just comes back to having that real bird's eye view, not only from a user or a service user relational perspective, but just from a data perspective, understanding what projects, managing all your projects within Salesforce, where's the funding coming from, how's it being allocated, who is managing that project, which service users are on that project, just again creating that sort of holistic view of everything that's happening in the organization. And I think my experience at Salesforce, it's great because of the scalability. As you've said, a lot of organizations are in a similar position where they have it potentially, but maybe not making full use of it or not understanding. And we try to spend as much time as possible continuously educating organizations that there's been updates on Salesforce, upgrades 3 times a year. There's always things changing within the platform, so you might not be aware of it sometimes, that there's new features, new functionality available, and how to use your existing Salesforce instance more efficiently. But then also thinking about out of the box and saying, well, what else could we potentially do? If we're a member organization, or we would like to create a community for members or service users or for volunteers, Salesforce can support that kind of functionality. You've mentioned things like live chat, which is a great piece of functionality that's relatively straightforward to set up and implement. There's so much you could do from the marketing perspective and engagement perspective as well, and all of that sits on Salesforce platform, with some great products and some great innovation. In terms of the next phase of time, I suppose, Abdullah, do you see the more development on Salesforce or more functionality that you'll be looking to?
Yeah, I think we took it in sort of 2 phases. The phase 1 was getting all of the data onto Salesforce and making sense of it and training staff in the day-to-day usage. And phase 2 was creating more productivity in terms of developing sophisticated automation and sort of processes to help with staff making use of Salesforce. And so right now we're at this second stage where I'm constantly developing more processes, more automation, so that people can do their work a lot more efficiently and effectively, and then it saves us time and it sort of helps us.
100%. Okay. So I think that's an ongoing process, as you mentioned. It's always, be revisiting processes because the organization changed, the process changed, the way you deliver services and run projects changes as well. So it's a constant revision. I know when we spoke yesterday, Abdullah, you mentioned your role. Obviously, you've given us your title already, but you also have the Salesforce role. And from what I understand, that you kind of fell into that kind of Salesforce administrator type of role. Maybe you could just talk us through that just briefly in terms of your journey, specifically with Salesforce and how you work with Salesforce.
Yeah, previously I've got a background in IT, so I found it easy to sort of become what they call a power user with Salesforce. So I was more of an enthusiastic power user at the time rather than an admin. But once economic change sort of handed over, there was a document that one of your colleagues created. They created a sort of a training manual for our organization, which I found very useful. And I sort of used that to become essentially the Salesforce admin, and I trained myself using the very helpful platform called Trailhead that Salesforce provides. It's a very interactive learning platform, and that was also mentioned on the manual. And so before I knew it, I found myself doing tasks that I thought were impossible, and it's very, very easy. I mean, there's no coding at all involved when it comes to configuration, when it comes to managing the Salesforce database. You don't have to know a line of code at all. It's mostly just pointing and clicking, a couple of formulas here and there, but mostly it's very intuitive and easy to learn. And I'm creating processes and automations, and records are automatically being created with a click of a button, and all of this is being done without a single code being typed. And so I found that extremely attractive in that sense.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's attractive to me because I'm definitely not a technology whiz when it comes to code and programming. So that aspect of Salesforce is really powerful for me. I think for most organizations, there's been a similar journey of someone being a power user, kind of getting skilled up, doing a project, potentially going through some training, and then using major resources like Trailheads, as you've mentioned, to go and upskill themselves and become self-sufficient. I think that's something we always would promote with organizations as well. So it's great for us to do projects with you and as an organization, but ideally we want you to become as self-sufficient as possible. And and now you're in a position where you're able to go and create new processes and workflows within Salesforce. You're able to go and change page layouts, create new reports and pretty cool pieces of functionality without having to make a phone call every 2 days to say, help, I don't understand what's going on and I need someone to come and do it for me. So I think for me, that's looking at the various solutions out there in the market. That's a key differentiator for Salesforce, and I'm glad that you've taken up the admin banner for the organization. Okay, so that's been. I
was kind of pushed into it at first, but I've eventually learned to love the role.
Yeah, I think that happens quite often as well. It's like, okay, we have the solution, someone needs to do it. Okay, you do it, and you get assigned that. And we've even got a couple of people on our team at Economic Change who, years ago that would have been the case. They were working. We've got a lot of guys from nonprofits ourselves who've come over and started to work with us. And that was they had a very similar journey. It's like, okay, well, we've got the Salesforce solution. You have a bit of IT knowledge. You could be the Salesforce admin, but then as the learning develops and actually understanding how easy it is to work with the platform, and actually starting to really, it sounds maybe a bit simplistic maybe, I guess, but it's just kind of getting to love the platform. Like, I like working in Salesforce because of the UI, the way it looks and the way it feels, and how easy it is to make changes and do some pretty cool things within the solution. And once you start getting to that point, a lot of people, like I said, we had people who said, okay, we want to do that full time, and now they've joined us as an organization. So yeah, it's an interesting journey, and that's been a great overview of the project. So thank you so much for doing that. And I'm glad to see that things are going well, and there's continuous work and there's continuous development on the solution. So I'm just wanted to focus a little bit, Abdullah, on just some of the more tangible kind of outcomes from the project in terms of benefits to the organization, to the teams. We've covered a bit of this stuff already, so if we've spoken about a few of these things already, then we don't have to harbor too much on that. But I think from an organizational perspective, what are the actual benefits that you've seen in terms of growth or efficiency? Like, have you been able to tie any numbers to that or increase your impact? What does that look like for you?
I think the biggest improvement has been in, as I mentioned earlier, having that organizational intelligence, being able to compare our year-on-year performance in a variety of areas, whether it's projects, whether it's our helpline, how many calls did we take last year compared to this year, how many people did we help, etc. Are we doing more projects on patient experience this year than the previous year? And we couldn't have really done this sort of analysis as easy as we are now if we didn't have Salesforce. And it's literally done with a click of a button. Just select. It's as easy as selecting the dates, and we have that information on hand. So I think that's been the biggest game changer for us, because it allows us to make informed decisions based on that kind of intelligence that we have, and it's price for us. That's priceless, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And before, I mean, I guess coming back to the project just briefly again. I mean, before going into the project, you know, as you engaged with economic change and looked at developing Salesforce, did you have sort of key metrics in mind that you wanted to improve, or was that something that you developed as you kind of went through the process and Salesforce was set up, and then you said, okay, now we have the solution, now we can really start thinking about numbers in terms of how many projects we're running, how many end users and service users we're having an impact on?
It was definitely the latter. I think we just needed to have that data on Salesforce as soon as possible. We definitely weren't at a stage where we could build on that at the time when that data was being held in the spreadsheet, because it was just so simplistic and two-dimensional. But now that we've put that information on Salesforce, we're able to run reports on things that we otherwise wouldn't have had time to. And you know, even though we're 10 people, Salesforce almost makes you feel like there's 100 people working here, because it does so much of the work in the background. And yeah, it gives you that sort of information that you wouldn't have otherwise. Yeah,
I was just thinking that you mentioned the number of staff. So you still have the same staff complement internally at the organization. You haven't grown the team, but just the impact and the efficiency and has increased. Is that the situation?
Definitely, yeah. Yeah, that's pretty much the situation. In terms of numbers, we're hovering around the same figures in terms of staff, but in terms of productivity and the way we work, it's increased tenfold, definitely.
Yeah, and from the staff members' point of view, I know you said there were a bit of resistance in the beginning in terms of adoption and just people buying into, you know, working on a new platform. Is that scenario different today?
It's a journey that took a while. It depends. I mean, everyone has a different learning curve, and so you need to make sure that you tailor everyone's learning experience and not sort of put everyone in the same room and expect them all to be at the same level. We definitely would encourage people to be sort of have those one-to-one sessions, because it's very important. And obviously, if you're a larger organization, then obviously do it by department. But Salesforce is, once you get to grips with it, I think it's just extremely easy to learn. A lot of the pages it's similar to navigating a website, really. You've got the menu at the top, and that's basically where the options are. And it's just, if you look at it as a website, it's a lot easier to sort of digest, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's an ongoing process, you know, and definitely having worked with a number of organizations, you know, it takes certain people in the organization longer to learn certain pieces of how to use the software, or it's just the perception takes longer to change. It's an ongoing process, and, you know, ongoing training and support, and, you know, change management is a huge part of what we do with organizations as well. On any project that we do, you know, really supporting the team as much as we can to help them understand the value to them as individuals. We have spoken a lot about, you know, all the wonderful ROI and working with economic change and the great benefits of Salesforce. I think really important, though, this is the last point, we really kind of looked at your future plans and where you're at now, but are there any kind of significant learnings that you would take, where maybe you would have done things a little bit differently, or maybe just approach the project in a slightly different way?
Being equipped with the knowledge that I have now, probably everything. Because obviously, the more you learn, the more you realize that there's more to know. It's a system. I mean, Salesforce itself has, as you know, 3 updates every year. It has a spring, summer, and winter update, and those bring improvements to the system. Some of them are slightly change the interface itself, and obviously staff may need to be informed about that. So that's always something to keep in mind, that you know, once you reach a certain level, never be satisfied. Never think, oh, this is it, we're fine now, we don't have to change. It's always, the system's always improving. There's always ways to do things more efficiently and more productively. It's definitely not intimidating. I can see why some people might find it intimidating at first. It's a brand new system, and they're used to looking at a spreadsheet, but this is a lot more powerful and more rich in terms of the data that it gives you, and it's a lot easier to use once you're using it day to day and operationally. But personally, I mean, I'm always learning new things. I'm constantly sort of improving my knowledge on Salesforce, and it's a process that just doesn't stop. It just keeps going and going.
Yeah, definitely. It is an ongoing process. You mentioned a few times, and yeah, a long way to continue, I suppose. You mentioned something there, and I think there's maybe a perception there. People, they see a whole new CRM solution, and you look at the Salesforce platform, and it is a massive platform with many solutions. And I think we spoke about it briefly yesterday. Even just the name Salesforce, Salesforce, an organization in the nonprofit, say the third sector, could look at that and say, well, how's that relevant to us? So that kind of will already be a stumbling block, but then I think once you get to understand what the platform is and what it could do, and that it's not necessarily the entire end-to-end platform that you're looking at, might be specific products, or there's the non-profit success pack, or there's Service Cloud from the service delivery perspective, which has got all the live chats and all that kind of stuff in it, and the helpline and the click to dial. So there's very specific products, and if you break it down and get away from the Salesforce name and what all the associations that come with that, then it's a completely different scenario, But yeah, I think it is. It's always easy to look back and say, well, knowing what I know now, I think we've all done that at some point. Okay, so I'm just going to move on here. That's been again a great overview of some of the the outcomes and what's happened in the space of time since you've kind of gone live with the project. So from our perspective, I don't think there's too much more to cover. I just wanted to see. I've got a question here, so we've got a time for Q&A. There's some takeaways here, which I'll go through now for the guys who are listening on the call. So Nick has asked a question here. He says, what is the day-to-day reality of working with Salesforce look like on the helpline? Does everyone log into Salesforce at the start of the day and just work through that, or do you drop in and out during the day? I have an answer.
Yeah. I thought that was a question for me. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I have my own idea, but please do answer it. Yeah.
Yeah. So as soon as you log into Salesforce, you can just remain logged in for the rest of the day. It's not something that you have to keep logging in and out of. You can just leave it open in the background, even if you've got a separate tab open or if you're working on a Word document. It's very easy to use. It's always there. It's just always in the background.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, that's pretty much what I was going to say as well. Yeah, thanks, Abdullah. I think it's all based on the license structure of Salesforce, and each individual user has their own user login and license. I know there are some scenarios with the licensing. If you have very big organizations, not necessarily in the third sector, who are running 24/7 help desk lines, there's different licensing structures that you can get, split licensing and that, but I don't want to complicate anything by going into that. But essentially, it's once you're logged in, you can just stay logged in, and you can still keep other documents open, whatever else you're doing. Nick had another question.
I just wanted to add as well. It's very easy to work from home using Salesforce as well. It's essentially a website you log into through your web browser, so you don't have to be in a specific location unless your Salesforce admin has locked usage for certain locations. So there's a lot of flexibility in the way you use it, and so just think of it as a website where you log in with your emails. Essentially, it's the same as that.
Yeah, definitely. I was going to mention that as well. Salesforce is really stringent on their security settings and making sure that you can set all those parameters. So, it could be an open-ended login where you could log in from home, or you could log in from public networks in a coffee shop, but it could also be restricted to an IP address. So I can only log in using my work IP address when I'm on the work Wi-Fi and the router, or connected to the ADSL, or I can only log in during certain times between our business hours. So all of those security settings can be set, but it does give you a lot of flexibility as well. And you mentioned earlier as well, there's the mobile app. So from the helpline specifically, I don't know how relevant that is, but the mobile app, you can obviously just have it on your phone and access data. And I think if you are on a support team, you can still see cases and things coming through. Nick had another question as well, Abdullah, just related around the ROI in terms of efficiency. So how much has the extra efficiency been related to doing new or extra things, and how much has that efficiency been from relieving existing tasks?
When you say how much, I think it's difficult to measure that, but I would say it's relieved a lot of repetitive manual tasks. A lot of admin work that we were doing prior to Salesforce has been eliminated. That's probably been the biggest change for us, because we've just started our journey in terms of automation and process management. So we've just started sort of delivering on those sorts of things. So I would say it's more on the side of removing the need to do admin and repetitive tasks that otherwise would have taken up a lot of staff time. And obviously, to most organizations, the biggest cost is staff. And so if you can free up their time, then you save a lot of money. And the biggest change for us has been freeing up that staff time and enabling staff to do other things that otherwise they wouldn't have been able to do.
Yeah, definitely. And I've heard that from a lot of organizations. It's great to be able to add new pieces of work into the way that you deliver services or run the operation. But it's also just about freeing up time so you can actually go out there and deliver the service and run the program or the project, and kind of stick to the mission of the organization, as opposed to running around doing admin tasks and trying to collate data and things like that. So I've heard that from a lot of organizations. We do have another question from Steliana, just asking around timing for implementation. So Steliana's question is, what is the best time in an organization's life when you can implement a CRM Salesforce? We, as mothers, as leaders, are in a startup phase. So if maybe you wanted to answer that as well, I've got an answer for that as well.
I mean, in terms of the timeline for us, I think our project started in October and it ended in February. So it was only a few months, but I would definitely stress that it depends. I think every organization is different. It depends on how big your organization is. The bigger it is, the more that needs to be considered. I definitely wouldn't try to implement change across an organization simultaneously, because that would disrupt operational activity. You obviously, and especially for us, we're 10 people, so 1 or 2 people can be an entire department, and if they're busy trying to import massive amounts of data, then that's 1 or 2 departments that's being completely shut down from doing their day-to-day activities. So I would definitely think of implementing it stage by stage, area by area, and not sort of all at once throughout an organization, because that could be quite disruptive to any organization, whether it's big or small. But yeah, it's definitely something that depends on the organization itself. We're only 11 people, so what worked for us might not necessarily work for an organization of 50 to 200 plus people. It might be, you might need a completely different approach. And so I think that's something perhaps economic change would have more expertise on, because they've worked with a variety of different organizations in terms of sizes. Yeah,
definitely. I think I would echo everything you're saying there. Each organization is slightly different. I think Steliana's question was in terms of, I think it was more along the lines really though of just when in the life cycle of the organization, in terms of the growth of the organization, when is the best time to implement a CRM like Salesforce? Do you do it at the beginning when you found the organization and you're still in startup phase? Or do you wait for a period of time until you're more established and you have maybe more staff and you've developed your programs and projects? And so my response to that, Steliana, would be, I think, as a non-profit, you're in a really strong position, because Salesforce offers free licensing, the Power of Us program, the 10 free licenses. So even as a startup, there would be minimal investment. From a licensing perspective, there would be no investment, and that's in perpetuity. From our perspective, we do a lot of work with small charities. We have small charity discount packages where we offer some pro bono hours. So my my recommendation would always be to do it sooner rather than later, not necessarily from day one when you kind of register the charity and there's one member of staff and it's a very, very small organization. But definitely before the organization grows too much and you've got lots of data sitting in there, everything we've discussed today that Abdullah's been mentioning, having lots of data sitting on separate spreadsheets and no one really knowing where the true data lies, and just trying to collate all of that and report on that. I think it's much more challenging to make the shift when you, especially organizationally, we talk about adoption and the user's experience, the staff user's experience. You know, once people get used to working in a certain way, as much as they might see the value of moving over to a platform like Salesforce, they are used to the way that they work. So then it becomes a whole question of change management and getting buy-in from the staff. Whereas if you do it from day one and you have the right solution in place, all your data is there, the reporting is there, the automation is there, your staff members who need to use the system are bought into it from day one. So that would always be my recommendation, is rather start off using the right tools than having to look at change tools further down the road, because we deal with a lot of organizations that have been running for 5, 10 years, 15 years, and now they've got thousands and thousands of historical records that they're trying to manage and be able to report on. And it's just, life becomes very, very difficult for them. So that would be my recommendation. I'm conscious of time, but we do have one more question from specifically related to the Patients Association from Ricardo. So Ricardo is asking, how far did the Patients Association have a performance management culture before Salesforce, and has this changed after the Salesforce implementation?
We didn't really have one prior to Salesforce. I think we just became aware that we needed to change the way we worked internally. There was a change in senior management at the time. So we had a new CEO and we had new senior staff that came in. So I think it was part of that whole sort of change management. And so this culture sort of developed from there. And before that, I think there wasn't any. We just ran like any other small charity. We just didn't change. We just did the things that we did previously. But with new management came new ideas and a new culture and a new strategy. And this was part of our new strategy to sort of to modernize the way we work in order to deliver our vision and our mission. And so I think it came with sort of the new senior management. I think that was the key thing. You need to have obviously their backing. If you don't, then obviously this wouldn't be possible. So we were fortunate enough, I think, and I particularly was fortunate enough to be in the organization at the time where there was a new change at the top of the organization to allow this to happen.
That definitely. That makes sense. I mean, are you currently at the point now where your project managers and various people in your team actually have key performance indicators as kind of metrics set up within Salesforce so that you could pull reports on to kind of measure their performance, or have you not gone that far?
We do have key performance indicators that we report on a monthly basis, and we also do our usual board reports every quarter. So this is a walk in the park now using Salesforce. Before it would be an absolute nightmare. It would be all hands on deck. Everyone would be panicking. You've got all these spreadsheets. Only one person can access the spreadsheet at a time. But now we've got a system where multiple people can access the same record simultaneously without issue. So you can run hundreds of reports. If you're a big organization, then you need to run 15 reports on the same 15 different reports within the same department. It's very easy to do that. Whereas if you're all sharing one or two spreadsheets, that's probably not possible.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think in my own experience as having used Salesforce, I mean, obviously we use Salesforce at Economic Change, and then the last 3-4 organizations I've been at, we've used Salesforce. And for myself, who has KPIs that I need to aim at in terms of my performance, it's not so much about is management checking up on me and trying to micromanage me. It's more about giving me the ability to be able to manage my own performance and to not be micromanaged, because at any point I can check in on my dashboards and on my reporting and see where I'm tracking against my performance targets. So I can quickly see throughout the week or the day or the month where I need to pick up activity, what's not working, where we need to look at strategy, and how I manage my day and how I manage the team that I work with. So I think there can be a perception from staff users that, a CRM is just going to mean that people are micromanaging us and going to be looking over the shoulder. But my comment always will be on that, well, it just allows me more freedom to be able to manage my own day-to-day business, I guess, and how I work, without having to have someone say, well, you're tracking behind on that, you're tracking wrongly on this, so I found it very helpful in my own personal experience, having a decent solution in place, So that brings us to the end of the questions. Thank you to everyone who's asked questions. They've been really good questions, actually, and it's really been good to talk through those. I do have these takeaways here, and it's been up for a little while on the screen, so I'm sure you've read through this. Please forgive the the double up here on strategic decision making. I didn't see that, but essentially, I guess that more than happy to have a chat with you about how we could maybe help the organization if you're looking at new solutions or looking how to further develop Salesforce. My Calendly link is here. If you would like to book a call with me directly in my calendar, you can see when I'm available. Here's my telephone number and my mobile as well, my email. So please do reach out if you want to see more about what Economic Change is doing and some of the other customers we work with as well. We're a social enterprise. We do a lot of webinars, a lot of free online courses as well that we offer. We're always running more training as well. So we do virtual training, we can do on-site training. So there's a lot of additional services outside of just Salesforce implementations. And if you're not too familiar, I encourage you to have a look. And please reach out at any point should you wish to have a conversation. And I guess lastly, I just want to say thank you to everyone on the call for making the time this morning. Again, apologies, I was a couple of minutes late getting it going. And a big thank you to Abdullah for joining and really giving us a lot of insight and talking through your experience in working with Economic Change and with Salesforce. Thank you very much, Abdullah.
My pleasure.
That's great. I'm going to close off the webinar now, and thank you to everyone. And I hope you have a great Friday and stay warm and dry, and have a great weekend. Thank you, everyone. Cheers.